All right, everyone, get ready for a deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at humanoid robots.
Ooh, sounds exciting.
It is, right. And, our listeners are particularly interested in that leap from those prototypes we see, like the really advanced but super expensive ones, to when we're going to start seeing robots, like everywhere, like in our homes and stuff.
Yeah, that's a question a lot of people are asking, like, when are we going to see that big jump?
Right. Like, it's kind of like when we first had cell phones, they were so clunky, and now we have these amazing smartphones. So how do we get there with robots? That's what we're trying to figure out.
It's like that iPhone moment everyone's waiting for, right?
Yeah.
When do robots become indispensable?
Exactly. And get this, the source we're looking at is an article called Die Castings, Unlocking the Mass Production of Humanoid Robots. And I know die casting doesn't sound as flashy as, a robot making breakfast.
Not quite as glamorous, haha.
But trust me on this manufacturing process, it's like the secret sauce. It could be the thing that makes robots affordable and, something we could all actually have.
It's often the stuff we don't see that makes the biggest difference, like the foundation of everything.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get all technical with die casting, let's talk about what's pushing this whole robot thing forward. I mean, Tesla's Optimus robot has been making
Oh,
headlines.
yeah, for sure, with Elon Musk making those big claims about what it can do.
Right. Like he's talking about walking the dog, mowing the lawn, basically like a super helpful companion that can handle all sorts of tasks.
He even said it's going to be the greatest product ever. I mean, that's quite a statement.
Yeah, that's definitely got people's attention.
Yeah.
And it seems like investors are buying into the hype too, because Goldman Sachs is predicting this huge market for humanoid robots.
Hmm.
Like by 2035, they think it'll be worth $154 billion.
Wow, $154 billion. That's a lot of money. That really shows that people believe this is going to be big, right?
Totally. But okay, let's be real for a second. Even with all this excitement and those big predictions, there are some serious challenges, before we're all hanging out with robots in our living rooms.
Definitely. I mean, robots are complicated. There's a lot to figure out before they're ready for prime time, so to speak.
Exactly. And the article we're looking at, it talks about four main challenges. Uh, Cost control, performance enhancement, reliability assurance, and production efficiency.
Okay, so let's break those down one by one. What do they actually mean in terms of robots?
Yeah, good idea. So cost control, that one seems pretty obvious. I mean, robots are complex machines, so making them affordable is key, especially if, the average person's going to be able to afford them.
Right, like think about the first computers. They were so expensive, only like companies and universities had them. But then as the tech got better and they could make them faster and cheaper, that's when everyone started getting them. So it's got to be the same with robots.
Exactly. Then there's performance enhancement. I guess that means making sure these robots can actually do all the cool stuff we want them to do, and live up to the hype.
Yeah, it's not enough for a robot to just look cool. It's got to be able to do things in the real world, like navigating around obstacles, picking things up, and interacting with people safely.
To not breaking down every 5 seconds, right?
Yeah, that too. Reliability is super important, especially if we're talking about robots in our homes helping with stuff. Imagine a robot helping someone who's older and it suddenly stops working. That could be a big problem, not just annoying.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's a really good point. So basically, we need robots that are affordable, they got to perform well, and be reliable.
Yep, that's a good summary. Oh, and we can't forget about production efficiency, right?
Right. That's the fourth one. I'm guessing that's all about making enough robots to actually meet the demand, if everyone wants one.
Yeah. Exactly. If humanoid robots are going to be as common as, say, smartphones, well, we need to be able to produce them in huge numbers and quickly, too. And this is where that die casting thing comes in. It might be a way to solve this.
Okay, so let's get into die casting. Like, what actually is it? I think a lot of people, like me, aren't exactly manufacturing experts. So break it down for us. Why is it so important for robots?
Okay, imagine you have like a mold. It's kind of like a waffle iron, but for metal, and it's super precisely made. And you take this molten metal, like liquid metal, and inject it into the mold under really high pressure. The metal cools down and hardens, and boom, you have this perfectly shaped part. As they make more and more robots, die casting is going to become even more important. They'll use it instead of machined parts and plastic parts.
So it's like a super precise, super fast way to make all those complicated parts that robots need.
Exactly.
But why is it better than the other ways of making parts, especially for robots? What makes it so special?
That's where it gets really interesting. Die casting, it has a bunch of advantages that are perfect for dealing with the challenges we talked about with robots. Like, First of all, there's this thing they call lightweighting.
Lightweighting. So like robots are going on a diet or something. What's the point of making them lighter?
Well, not exactly a diet, but getting rid of extra weight is really important. With die casting, they can use these special metal alloys that are lighter but still super strong. This way, the robot can move around easier, its battery lasts longer, and it doesn't use as much energy. The article said that die casting can actually make a robot 10 to 30% lighter, which is a lot.
Wow, 10 to 30%. That's actually huge. But okay, if the robots are lighter, does that mean they're weaker too? Like, can they still do heavy duty stuff if they're, lighter?
That's the cool thing, they don't lose strength. The metals they use, they can be just as strong as machined aluminum, which means the robot parts are super durable. So the robot can work hard, handle different tasks, and it'll last longer too, which is important if it's going to be around for a while.
So we got lightweight and strong. That's awesome. What other cool stuff can die casting do?
Well, think about how robots move, especially their joints and all the connections. They have to be super precise, right? Like how smoothly your arm bends or how gently you can pick something up with your fingers. To copy that, you need amazing accuracy in the parts. Die casting does that. It makes sure every part fits perfectly. This means the robot moves smoothly and reliably, which is super important for doing those complex tasks we were talking about.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are there any specific examples of where that precision is like super important?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Think about a robot's hands, like the fingers and all the sensors in them. Those are complicated parts that have to be made with so much detail. And die casting can do that. It's really precise. It's like creating a tiny, perfectly working piece of art.
Wow, that's incredible. So we've got lightweight, strong, and precise.
hmm
What's the fourth awesome thing about die casting?
Okay, so this is where die casting really shows off, like in terms of how efficient it is. Remember we talked about needing to make a ton of robots? Well, die casting can make really complicated shapes, like in one go, like that robot hand we were just talking about, all those tiny parts and details. Die casting can do that in one step. That means there aren't as many pieces to put together, which saves time and money, which is huge for making a lot of robots.
So basically, it's making the whole process of building a robot faster and cheaper.
Yeah.
And that helps make them more affordable, right?
Exactly. Die casting is like super speedy, and that makes a huge difference when you're trying to make a lot of something. The faster they can make the parts, the cheaper the robots will be in the end, so more people can buy them.
That's awesome. Okay, so we talked about the fancy design stuff, and now all the nitty-gritty with die casting, and it seems like it's going to be really important for making robots a reality. But are there actually companies out there doing this? Like, who's leading the way with die casting for robots?
Yeah, for sure. The article we're looking at, it specifically mentions this company called Sunrise Metal. They're like the experts in die casting for robots. They're making all these high-tech parts for companies that are building robots.
So they're like the robot part supplier.
Right.
That's so cool. There are actually companies specifically focused on making this happen.
Totally. And it's not just them. There are other companies too, big and small, that are realizing how awesome die casting is, and they're putting a lot of money into using it for robots. It's becoming a big deal in the whole industry.
Yeah, it makes sense because like we were saying, die casting is precise, it's efficient, and it's not super expensive. It's like the perfect way to make all those crazy complicated robot parts.
Exactly. And the more people want robots, the more companies are going to turn to die casting to make them. It's going to be super interesting to see how this changes the whole robot industry.
Okay, so we've got Sunrise Metal and all these companies jumping on board with die casting. What about actual robots or robot parts that are being made with die casting right now? Like, are there any cool examples?
One of the coolest ones is robotic hands. Remember how we talked about how important it is for robots to have hands that can move like ours, like picking things up and stuff? Die casting lets them make those super complicated hand structures with amazing accuracy, like down to the tiniest detail. It's letting them make robots that can actually interact with things in ways they couldn't before.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's one thing for a robot to be able to, like, walk around, but to actually be helpful, it's got to be able to use its hands,
Yeah,
like us.
totally. And die casting is a big part of making that happen. Another cool thing they're using it for is robotic exoskeletons.
Oh, yeah, those things people wear to, like, be stronger and move better. I've seen videos of those. They're insane. It's like having superpowers.
I know, right? And die casting is super important for making them work. Because they can make parts that are super light but also super strong, the exoskeletons can actually help people do stuff without being too heavy or bulky to where.
So die casting is making robots lighter and more efficient, and it's helping us be stronger too.
Mhm.
That's crazy. The possibilities are, like, endless.
Right. It's pretty mind-blowing, and it's not just limited to, like, humanoid robots and exoskeletons. They're using die casting for all kinds of robots, like the ones working in factories, drones that fly around and take pictures, even self-driving cars. It's everywhere.
Wow, so die casting really is everywhere. It's like the secret ingredient for all these amazing robots we're seeing.
Yeah, it's like the unsung hero of the robot revolution, quietly making everything work behind the scenes.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot in this deep dive, from the technical stuff about die casting to like the bigger questions about what happens when robots become more common in our lives.
It's been a pretty wild ride.
It has. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you, our listener, with this. The future of robots is super exciting, and die casting is a huge part of making it happen. But we also need to think about like the ethical side of things. What happens when robots can do more and more of the things we do? What does that mean for us?
Yeah, that's a really important point. It's not just about the cool tech, it's about what it means for society and how we deal with those changes.
Exactly. Earlier, we talked a bit about the ethical stuff around robots.
Hmm.
What are some specific things we should be thinking about, like as we move toward a future where robots are everywhere?
Well, one big thing is jobs. Like, as robots get better at doing things that humans do now, there's a chance that some people might lose their jobs. We got to start thinking about how to help people adapt to those changes and make sure everyone has the skills they need to succeed in a world with more robots.
That's a really important point. It's not just about the tech itself, it's about how we manage the changes and make sure everyone's okay.
Exactly. And as robots get even smarter and more independent, it's going to be interesting to see how we view them. Like, are they just machines or are they something more? How do we interact with them? These are questions we need to think about.
It's like science fiction is becoming reality, right? We're not just talking about robots doing simple tasks anymore. It's about them potentially, like understanding us and interacting with us on a whole other level.
I know. It's crazy to think about. And those conversations need to happen now before robots are everywhere. We have a chance to figure out how to use this technology in a way that's good for everyone.
I completely agree. It's not about being scared of the future or like rejecting new tech. It's about having conversations and making smart choices about how we use robots in a way that benefits everyone.
Exactly. We're not just watching this happen. We have a say in how it goes.
Okay, so we've covered so much in this deep dive. We started with your question about how we get from those expensive robot prototypes to robots being everywhere. We talked about the challenges, we found out about die casting, and we even looked at some real-world examples of companies and robots using this tech.
It's been a really amazing deep dive.
It really has. And before we jump into the ethical stuff, I think it's important to look at some real-world examples of how die casting is actually being used to make the robots of today and the future. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Seeing these ideas come to life in real products is going to help us understand just how powerful die casting is for robotics.
Exactly. So are you ready to check out some specific companies and how they're using die casting to shape the future of robots?
Absolutely. I can't wait to see what they're doing.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We've been talking all about how die casting is going to make robots like a normal part of our lives, not just something we see in sci-fi movies.
Yep. We talked about all the cool tech stuff with die casting and even touched on, the bigger questions about what it means for us as robots become, like, more common.
Exactly. And now I'm really pumped to get into some real-world examples, like what companies are actually out there using die casting to build robots right now.
Well, the article we were looking at, it mentioned this company, Sunrise Metal, as like a major player. It seems like they're specializing in die casting solutions for specifically companies that make robots. So they're basically supplying the parts that let these super complex machines be built.
That's so cool. So there are companies out there that are like totally dedicated to making this happen. It's not just, an idea. It's a real industry that's growing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And Sunrise Metal is just one example. There are tons of companies, like big ones and small startups, that are realizing how awesome die casting is for robots, and they're putting a lot of resources into it. It's becoming a big trend.
Yeah, I can see why. Like we've been talking about, die casting is just like perfect for making robot parts. It's so precise, it's efficient, and it's not crazy expensive.
Right. And as more and more people want robots, we're going to see more and more companies using die casting. It's going to be really interesting to see how it changes the whole robot industry.
So we've got Sunrise Metal and all these other companies getting on board with die casting. But what about actual robots? Like what specific robots or parts are being made with this right now? Any cool examples?
Oh yeah, for sure. One really cool area where they're using die casting is for robotic hands. Remember how we talked about how robots need to have hands that are like really good at moving and picking stuff up just like ours? Well, die casting is making that happen. They can create these super complicated hand structures with amazing detail using die casting. It's like crazy precise. This is letting them build robots that can interact with the world in ways they never could before.
I know, it's so cool. It's one thing to have a robot that can, like, walk or roll around, but if it can't use its hands, it's not really that helpful, is it?
Right, it needs to be able to actually do things, and that's what die casting is allowing. Another really cool application is in robotic exoskeletons.
You mean those things people wear to be, like, super strong? I've seen videos, they're insane. People are, like, lifting cars and stuff.
I know, right? It's pretty amazing. And die casting is a big part of that because they can make parts that are super light, but
Mhm.
also incredibly strong. They can build exoskeletons that are powerful, but not too heavy for people to wear.
So it's not just making robots lighter and better, it's helping us become stronger, too. This is, like, blowing my mind.
It's pretty wild. And it's not even just humanoid robots and exoskeletons. Die casting is being used for all sorts of robots. The ones that work in factories, drones that fly around and take pictures, even self-driving cars are using die casting.
Wow, it really is everywhere. It's like this hidden force that's pushing the whole robot revolution forward.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, we don't see, but it's making all these incredible things possible. It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
Well, I think we've covered a lot today. We started with your question. How do we get from those, like, super expensive robot prototypes to robots being everywhere? We learned about the challenges, found out about die casting as the big solution, and even looked at some companies and actual robots that are using this technology. It's been a really incredible deep dive.
It really has.
It has. And as we wrap up this episode, I want to leave all of you listening with this thought. The future of robots, it's incredibly exciting, and die casting is playing a huge role in making that future a reality. So stay curious, stay informed, and keep exploring the awesome ways technology is shaping the world around us. Thanks for tuning in to the deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.